Radhe Radhe everyone. Welcome to our daily wisdom from Bhagavad Gita session. Happy Republic Day, everyone. Nitinji, Radhe Radhe, over to you.
Radhe Radhe Amitamanji. Thank you, Vijayji and Poojaji, for a wonderful session. Happy Republic Day to all of you. Gantantra Divas ki Shubhkamnaएं. Okay, let's get started with our opening prayers. Today we are going to discuss a very interesting topic. Like I said, in all the sessions, we take the main pill, which is the shlokas, Bhagavad Gita shlokas that we do. And in our Tuesday session, we pick up a concept, usually from Bhagavad Gita or scriptures. It's more like a supplement that we have to take along with the main pill. So one aspect of spirituality is to continue acquiring spiritual wealth. So one aspect is accumulation, and equally important is to be able to preserve that accumulation and not fritter it away. So we'll pick up a couple of topics today. Let's see how far we can proceed. It's a pretty important topic. And let's get started with our opening prayer. So let me share my screen and then we will get started. Amritamaniji, is my audio clear today?
Yes, Nitinji.
Please.
Hope even mine is loud and clear.
Yes, we heard you loud and clear. All right, so let's get started with our opening prayers. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwaraha, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Radhe Radhe. Good morning, good evening, everyone. So let's get started today. We'll get started with a story today. Okay. It's a very interesting story. So there was a king once upon a time. That's how a story usually starts. So once upon a time, there was a king, and he had arranged for a Brahman Bhoj. So Brahman Bhoj is like giving food to Brahmins. It's like you prepare food and you give it to Brahmins because it's considered very auspicious when you do that. So he had arranged for a Brahman Bhoj. Then what happens? As you can see, good food is being prepared to feed a lot of Brahmins that are invited on a Brahman Bhoj. Now what happens is there is an eagle in the sky, and this eagle is carrying a snake. So as the luck would have it, the snake is dropped in the food that is being prepared. So the eagle drops the snake onto the food, and it was a poisonous snake. Okay, it was not an ordinary snake. It was a poisonous snake that had barely died. Eagle had lifted it, and before it could devour it, it actually dropped it into the food. And as a result, the Brahmins who ate that food became sick, and some of them possibly died as well because it was a very poisonous snake. Now what happens is there are more Brahmins that were coming in to have that bhoj, and on the way there was a lady who came to know about this news that Brahmins are getting sick after eating the food, and some of them are dying as well. So this lady told those Brahmins who were coming on the way that king is feeding poison and food, okay, just to warn them, and so that they don't meet the same fate as some of the other Brahmins met. So this is how the story unfolded. There was a Brahmin Bhoj. The king arranged for that. The food was being cooked. The eagle was carrying a snake. The snake was dropped. The food got poisoned. The Brahmins got sick and some of them died as well. And some of the Brahmins were warned by this lady that the king is, feeding poison in food. So this is how the story unfolded. Now comes Chitraguptji, Chitragupt Devata. Chitragupt Devata is the one who keeps an account of our punyas and our sins. So when we depart from this gross body, which is called death, we have to face Chitragupt, who has a ledger. It's like an accounting book which is maintained by Chitragupt, which talks about all the punyas and the sins that we have acquired in this particular life. So he maintains a log of that and they go through that. So now Chitragupt, when he looked at this entire scenario, he was in a dilemma. Whom to accord this sin to? Right? Brahmins died, obviously some sin happened. But now whom do we attribute this sin to? Whatever unfolded here. Can it be attributed to the king? Because he had the purest of intentions. He just wanted to feed the Brahmins. Can it be attributed to the eagle, who's a bird? And obviously there was no conscious effort to drop the snake. Can it be attributed to the snake itself? Because it was its snake's poison which resulted in all those deaths. Or it could be attributed to the Brahmins themselves who ate food and then, because they ate something that was poisonous, wrong timing, wrong place at the wrong, they were just purely being at a wrong place. Whom would this sin get to? Anybody who wants to take this? I'll just stop share for a bit because this is a pretty interesting topic. And I think I forgot to share sound. Yes, Amritamani, you can call upon. Let's have a quick thing before
Yes.
we...
Kumarji?
Yes, Kumarji.
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe. Nitinji, Amritamani and everyone. I think some of them are very clear, right? The eagle, snake, not their fault. The king had good intentions. Again, not his fault on that. The Brahmins, they came to eat, no fault on them. The lady, of course, there is a fault without a doubt that she lied, saying that the king was feeding poison. So that also there's no doubt. So there is a sinner there. Now the king has a little more responsibility. Now that happened, what he did after that also matters. Which means, did he compensate them? Was he apologetic? What did he do? He obviously what he did killed something indirectly. He should still do something more than that. Is what my process is.
Good point. I think the judicial system was probably not as evolved as it is today, because any lapse that happens in a company, the CEO, the buck stops at the CEO, right? So the CEOs can be jailed if you don't meet a SOX compliance in a company, right? So yes, to that extent, king has the buck stops at a king. Fair point. Let's hear from other participants as well.
Samji, please go ahead.
Yes, Samji.
Radhe
Radhe Radhe. Kumarji said the eagle and the snake have no fault of their own, and king had the right intentions, and the lady also, to some extent, she, without getting proper information, she was just going by the hearsay or whatever. The king is poisoning the food intentionally, but she was thinking. I think the take can be in that the Brahmins who had the bad luck or their old karmas, they were showing up. So their bad luck was to be died or to suffer the consequences of that one. So it was a kind of their own bad karmas also to some extent. Even sometimes some people will say that, like Durvasha, that he may be cursing that one. I think even the curse, if they curse it, should not be affecting the king. because it wasn't his intention. His intention was pure. So what is his fault? So basically, I would say, they're bad karmas. They have to suffer that one. So that's my 2 cents in that situation.
Yeah, sure. But yeah, from Chitragupt's standpoint, he still has to accord that sin. So yes, the law of karma is orchestrated in a manner that it comes around. What goes around comes around. But still, if you become an instrument to incur some kind of a sin because the other person probably had invited it in his karma, you still have to be, you'll be accorded that sin in your logbook. So yes, maybe one more participant and then we'll continue with this discussion.
Don't have any bad intention at all.
Yeah. Good points, fair points, Samji. Or is it a kind of a shared sin, right? 50%, 20%, 10% kind of a deal. I don't know if there's a shared sin model as well as one. Let's quickly hear from a few other participants and then we'll continue.
Nitinji, Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.
Oh, thank you. Namaskar and good morning.
Good to hear you, Nitinji.
After a very long time, I could join. I'm so lucky. Today is Republic Day.
Okay.
Sir, what I feel is that it was their destiny only, but because of good destiny, that lady had informed them that, look, you don't eat this. Then also, despite that notice, they ate that. That was their duty, at least to inquire and check that. I think the Chitragupta would obviously put them doshi, the Brahmins only, because they were under duty bound to check after hearing the information. I don't think so any other persons would be responsible. As per my limited knowledge.
Okay, yeah, fair point. But yeah, these Brahmins were the newer ones. So the ones who ate were not informed. Okay, let me put it that way. But yeah, I think that's a good point. If you commit
they
something,
were duty bound at least to inquire or tell to the king that this news we have come around. So
okay,
he would have put some efforts to check whether the food is poisonous or not.
Okay, fair point.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Nitinji. Good to hear you after a while.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for
Thank you so much. Okay, let's take maybe 2 more hands and then we'll proceed.
Tiji, Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.
Hariom.
Yes. Hariom, Radhe Radhe.
Hariom, Radhe Radhe.
Yeah. Nitinji, what I feel is there is no sin because no one intentionally poisoned the food.
Very true.
See, death is inevitable, right? In what form it is going to come, no one knows. No one, and the intention of the king was pure. The intention of eagle and the snake isn't there at all.
True, very true.
Correct. So the death, it's like prarabdha. It was their time for to leave this bhulok. They left. For those, their time was not there. So all those Brahmins were saved. That's what I think. So I don't think there is a sin at all.
All right. No, that's a fair point, Aarti. Nice. We'll continue with this. Yeah, Chitragupta has to do his job, right? So we'll see what happens. Last one we'll take, but thank you so much, Aarti ji. I think that's a fair point. Everybody's intention was clear around that.
Ramya ji, please go ahead.
Yes, sir, Ramya ji. Ramya
ji, we cannot hear you. Yeah, we cannot hear her. I don't know.
You need to fix your audio, Ramya ji. Okay.
Shyamji had to add something. Would you like to, Shyamji?
Yes, Shyamji, did you have something to add?
You can unmute yourself.
Similar thing was nobody had the intention to kill somebody. It was just a matter of chance that the eagle was passing by, the snake fell in the food. And I guess it was a karma, as Sammy said. It's all about karmas. How, when, where, it's all God's will. So we're just part of it. So I guess nobody is or should be at fault. Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe. All right, fair point. So let's see. So Chitragupta, if you look at it, the different entities involved, starting with king, obviously he didn't have that intention, right? His intention was to feed the Brahmins, so he did not plan to poison them. Eagle, can we fault with eagle? No, because it did not do it intentionally. Plus it lacks vivek or buddhi for that matter. So you cannot fault eagle. Like I said, right? Only humans are endowed with intellect. So if they do something knowingly because they have the discerning power, then it is counted as a karma. For animals, it is not. So even if a lion kills a human being and becomes a man-eater, it's not counted as a sin. in court of God's law, or Chitragupta will not count it as a karma. They are devoid of, it's like bhogyonis. They are called bhogyonis only, similar to Swarglok. They are also bhog. They enjoy Ashwarya. They enjoy, just the bhog. They're scripted, and they go by their instincts and impulses only. Snake, you can definitely not fault because snake was dead. Right? So we have eliminated all these entities. Brahmins, the poor Brahmins who ate, who did not know that, you can't fault them because they were invited by the king, so they would eat the food that was served in front of them. Now let's look at the lady. She's saying that the king is feeding poison in the food. Now Chitragupta, okay, the story is a very important one from scriptures. He accorded this sin because sin was performed somewhere. This sin was not that the Brahmins got killed, okay, it was purely bad luck. Because of their prarabdha or whatever happened, it was bad luck, or maybe wrong timing. Lady actually lied. Okay, her statement is she actually put it on the king that he's feeding poison in the food. He was not feeding poison in the food. So Chitragupta, after a lot of deliberation, he accorded 100% of that to this lady. That sin, whatever sin happened in this entire episode, not of killing somebody, but there was an act, there was a lie there. So what it is said is, when you say something that comes out of your mouth, and if it is not true, it is detrimental, you have to take 100% of that sin. And on the other hand, let's say you say something about somebody and it is true, right? But you said something negative about somebody and it is true, still 50% is accorded to you. That is what scriptures say. So we got to be very careful about what comes out of our mouth. That is why I said it has to pass those 4 or 5 tests they call in Buddhism or in scriptures as well. And even otherwise it said. So we got to be very careful about what we are talking about others, because if it is not truth and we are saying something lie, then it's a sin. We acquire that. And let's say we are saying and it is right, still 50% is accorded to us. So with that, let's get into our Q&A. That's the topic. We are going to have a bit of discussion today. So why do people tend to... Yes, Artiji, did you have a question? Or we can continue with our discussion on this topic because it is linked to what we are going to discuss today. Okay, looks like somebody has a question. Please go ahead.
Artiji, please go ahead. You can unmute yourself, Artiji.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Radhe Radhe. Happy
Radhe.
Republic Day to everyone. Ma'am, sir, to what extent will she be liable for the sin? Like that she is lying, or the death of those
the lying,
rishis?
Not the death. I don't know what is the intensity of that sin, but the sin is definitely not of murdering somebody. But in this whole episode, if there was anybody who committed a sin, that was that lady. Nobody else committed a sin in that case. So if anything that came out of as a sinful act in this entire episode, that was that lady talking, saying that the king is feeding poison, because it was not the truth, right? She just said that, and it was kind of not a correct statement. So the story is basically telling, when we utter something out, right? If we say, you know what, this person is like that only, and if you have said that and that person is not like that, then basically you are incurring a sin around that. And let's say if that person is like that only, is this guy is a thief or he's a liar, we say that, then also, and if that, let's say for example, that person is a thief or a liar, still 50% of the sin is acquired by you, accorded to you by Chitragupta ji. That is why I found this story pretty interesting. Swamiji told us in one of his lectures few days back, so I thought we'll bring it up. Yes, did anybody have any other questions as well on this?
Yes, actually Ramyaji wanted to say that it is the carelessness of cook. He might have covered food with lid.
Okay, yeah, no, yeah, that's a fair point. Maybe it required a kind of a cooking which had to be done without the lid. So
yeah,
we can go so point. Technicalities, we can go into that. A lot of things could have happened, but I think the gist of the story was to tell, basically, there are situations that happen, but we got to be just careful about what we are saying about others, because sometimes we just say that, stereotype people, because if they don't fit into the model of our minds, that can actually be a bit treacherous proposition, because you might actually be incurring sin just because you're venting out. Yes.
Prashant ji.
Yeah, Radhe. Actually, my question is, I think the cook should need to be penalized because they did not perform their duty with 100% concentration. Because I think snake is not responsible, neither the king. I understand, I agree that okay, the lady should be penalized, but then she was also correct on her part that for that lady the king is feeding poison, so she was also correct, but it is only the cook who need to be very cautious, and they need to prepare the food with utmost care, and before serving I think the king should have also monitored or just looked at what actually has been prepared and what is being served.
So that's
So I
a fair
think in
point.
this,
Quality check,
even the king,
maybe quality check. Chitragupta ji probably might have factored in, weighed in all of that stuff. But yeah, that's a fair point. You could have done quality check, but there could be other circumstantial things as well. Maybe the food was already prepared and snake was overlooked, and it was business as usual as you would serve in any bhoj, right? So we are discounting all the factors where we say the quality check or some kind of a due diligence could have prevented it. But the point was she cast an aspersion on king's intentions without really knowing it for a fact, right? What she said was he's serving poison. That was never king's intention. So that was her perception of this whole situation, and in the process she ended up saying something which was not true, and because of it Chitragupti said, okay, if anybody who was at fault in this whole situation, it was she. But yeah, we can get into those. Obviously we have to overlook some of the nitty-gritties of it just to get the gist of the story. The point here being, what comes out of our mouth, unless it improves the quality of silence, or it is something which is factually true and we are 200% sure, we got to be careful, especially if we are saying something negative about a situation or a person. That was the key thing here. Yes, couple of other hands real quick before we get into our discussion topic.
Yeah, Juvanji has a question in regards to Nitinji's question. Why would a person incur 50% penalty for telling the truth?
I don't know. I mean, that's what our scriptures say. Maybe that's a way to deter us from being careful, okay? Not to, in Radha Govind Geet, Maharaj is actually written very nice. Par dosh dekhu nahi Govind Radhe, par ninda. So par dosh and par ninda, these two things are the worst, what do you call that, enemies that one can have on spiritual path. Why? Because whatever we have acquired, it's like frittering it away very quickly. So when we start to dwell upon others' faults and we start to dwell upon finding faults in others and par ninda, saying bad things about others, it's something which is detrimental for our spiritual journey. And that is why it said that we need to first become like Hans. Hans has a unique quality of being able to pick milk from water. So if you put milk in front of a Hans, it will pick up only the milk, leave out the water part. So we need to first become like Hans, our scriptures say, where we see only the positive qualities in people and neglect the negative ones because they don't really add value to our life, only dirty our mind. And after that, you become Paramhans, where you see everything as milk only. Even the water seems to be like milk, in the sense that you acquire that consciousness that you are able to see divinity in everybody and understand that if they are afflicted by Maya, that is fine, but you just pick the good and you see good all around. I'll tell you a story around that as well. Yes. Anybody else who wanted to say? So the question that I wanted to say, we can continue on this conversation. Let me put the question as well, and then we'll continue on this discussion. Why do people tend to find faults in others? It gives a sense of superiority. It's a symptom of an impure mind. Gives a sense of pleasure as well. Or people have faults, so what's the harm in finding faults? They will at least improve when it is pointed out. No fun in gossiping if a third person and her faults are not discussed. Which one option that we relate most to? And then we'll get into some specifics around it as well. Yes, let's continue now. I can see quite a few other hands.
Yes. Okay. I think Nitinji wanted to add something. Nitinji, please go ahead.
Sir, sorry, first of all, that I heard the facts incorrect. I understood.
No worries.
That
No.
lady was, yeah, because she has to be punished because she lied without realizing the truth. She was not the judge to understand, and she spoke the lie. I'm sorry. I
No
heard it
worries.
in the wrong.
No
She
worries.
had
No worries.
Now, with respect to this question, sir, I feel now everybody has got their own aura and they have their own thinking or whatever their what we call, I'm not getting that word. So they will think in that their own way as per their samskar. So I will find fault because I want to put somebody down or I want to show I am great. Sometimes that I have a bad intention. So all these things that you have given, I think all are incorrect. Maybe some addition would also be there. So it is as per everybody's sanskar that they're carrying with their birth. So these all things, maybe I want to show that I am great or I get some pleasure by finding faults. They all these are correct, sir. Whatever you have given, maybe some addition also.
Sure. Great point, Nitin. In fact, you are technically eligible to find faults. I'll tell you why. Because you are a lawyer. So, lawyer, teacher, and parents, they can find faults because that's part of their profession. But unless you are one of these three and you're simply finding faults, then there could be a bit of a problem here. But let's hear from that. And I'll tackle some of these parts here, basically, where, and maybe if you have any other option, you can talk about that as well. Because finding faults is something, it comes very naturally to us. Our mind gravitates towards it fairly quickly, and it takes a lot of practice. And obviously, it's not easy to do that because mind will, even before you realize, you would have found the fault or become judgmental or opinionated about somebody. It happens very, very quickly, very fast. And that's our subtle ego in play as well, because it gives us it's our pride talking. Whenever we find fault in somebody, it's our pride talking. But let's hear from other participants to build on this conversation before we get a little deeper into this topic from a scriptural standpoint as to why we need to refrain from that and what is the kind of mindset we can acquire around that. Yes.
Joanji, would you like to add in? I saw your hand raised from a long time.
Yes, Joanji.
Radhe Radhe, Joanji, we cannot hear
you.
you.
Radhe. No, that's okay. My question, maybe I misunderstood, but I was asking in regards to Nitinji's question that if you see something, maybe I misunderstood the question, but my thinking is if you see someone is making a mistake or doing something that is not right, I don't know, in my mind, I feel obligated that I should say something to correct that person so the mistake is not repeated. But then if you're talking about finding fault is different than if you are, identifying somebody who is doing something that is not correct, that is not proper. I feel then the mistake will carry on. And I don't know, I think if somebody is doing something wrong, they need to be, maybe they're not aware, maybe, and if you don't say anything, you become part of that problem.
Yep, very fair point. True, Chunji. So the next question that we can pose there is, when we tell somebody with their best interests in our heart so that they can improve, when that happens, do we approach it with a, what is the thought process that goes on in our head? Are we approaching that situation with love and compassion that person should improve, or are we approaching it with a sense of angst and frustration over that person, that why this person continues to do that it boils down to the consciousness in which we point that out in that case?
Yeah, no, I would want that person to improve, and I wouldn't want somebody else to make the same mistake or somebody else to say it in a way that would hurt that person, especially if the mistake was done unintentionally.
True. No, that's a fair point. In fact, we have to deal with a lot of people in the corporate world as well, right? The whole system is based around meritocracy and making sure you are doing the process improvement and all that good stuff that comes there. But when we talk about in general with people, right, does our mind have a tendency to pick faults all the times? Or it's like it happens, but the disposition is more about love and compassion towards making a difference in that person's life. If that intent is there, I think that's perfectly acceptable in that case. That disposition needs to be proper, and it needs to be approached with love and compassion, as opposed to proving somebody wrong or having that air of superiority, or approaching it with disdain that the other person doesn't understand it, kind of a deal. So I think the consciousness and the way we approach it makes the whole difference in that case. But great point. Thank you for bringing that out, Joanji. Yes. Other aspect is that have you ever seen two people talking and talking about stuff that, that is where I made mistake? It's usually a third person. It's kind of an interesting phenomena. Whenever two people are talking, it's usually about a third person, and that third person is wrong, and both persons are in the affirmative. Yes, you are right, kind of a deal, right? So that brings us to, when we talk about that, it's usually we're trying to find some chink in that person's personality that is magnified in our discussion, and we keep talking about that as well. So gossiping also, another manifestation of when we try to find faults in people and situations around. So these are, so anything else anybody wanted to add? See quite a few other hands raised on this one. And it gives us kind of a kick also, right, to us, when it's like you're trying to prove that you have an air of superiority over somebody else. So that could be there as well. Any other points you wanted to add on this discussion before we move further on this one?
Let me give it to Padmaji and Annapurna.
Yes, Padmaji.
Padmaji, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Padmaji.
So there are a couple, this is the way that I see it. There are a couple of different layers of the ways that we can actually take this question, from a spiritual angle and from materialist angle. Mm-hmm. The intent, intention, and intuition, right? Intent, intention, and intuition. If your innate intuition is always intentionally finding some fault in the other person, that is what is wrong spiritually, right? If your innate nature is always constantly trying to find, and if your intuition is always that is what is wrong. That's what I feel spiritually, that is what is not right. But we have to also consider situations, and this exactly the same question that I actually asked Swamiji right after he gave the lecture over the summer. This snake example. I asked Swamiji, I said, does it mean that there is no right or wrong, whether even in Mahabharata or Ramayana or in our own lives, there is no wrong? Is it only that our perception is wrong and we are trying to find faults? There is no such thing as right or wrong. So this is what Swamiji gave, that other story that Swamiji always gives about snake and Narad Mahamuni, right? The snake.
The same snake, right? The snake which will make his.
Right. So this is what Swamiji said, that there is there are situations where things are truly wrong. They are wrong. You just can't blindly say that there is no fault. And serious businesses, serious situations, serious relationships, there are things which are completely wrong. So you cannot be blindfolded and take the spirituality blindfoldedly and say, you know what, I'm very spiritual and I don't want to see that there is fault, because this is what spirituality says, that don't see fault. So you have to use your common sense and logic to say that there is some there is some wrong in what is happening in your life, and you should be able to use a spiritual thinking to recognize that something is wrong happening, and it is your dharma also to protect yourself. That is spiritually. Always, it's not a license for everybody trying to find fault in people. That is number two thing that I want to say. And the other thing is, when we are living in a society, right, and we define a good citizen, right? A good citizen is like somebody who is recognizing something which is happening around you. If something bad is happening, you feel, right? It is being told to you that as a good citizen, you have to report to the authorities. Something, bad is happening. That is one on a societal level. But within relationships, out of love, out of compassion, your deep love and compassion, you really want to help yourself and you really want to help the other person, support that person when something is going wrong. That is not fault finding, but you have a deep connection and deep love and compassion and empathy for that person, and seeing out of your love, you really feel for that person and you want to support that person, whether it is your child or a relationship, you want to support that person to see if you can help that person get better, right? When your intentions. So those are the three things I think, we have to take into consideration, that there are boundaries within the situations where we have to use that spiritual mind and the spiritual intention and the spiritual action. Because one of the lectures, Swamiji, I think he says, intention, many of the things in history, they were started off with a good intention, right? Green revolution, they wanted to feed a lot of people. The intention was right, and nobody is able to see what happens in 10 years, how some things can be translated. That is karma, right? We don't have a control over karma, but your true intention of whether it is your intuition that is always telling you to find faults, or whether it is your genuine thing that you really want to help the other person, and including yourself, that I feel is like a couple of different factors that we need to channel in and take into consideration when situations come in our life. That's what I feel.
Great point, Padmaji. I think the mental disposition is the key here. Are you approaching that situation with love and compassion or any other emotion, right? So it all boils down to the purity of intention around that particular act. Even when we are trying to call out something that is maybe called as a fault, what is your mental predisposition around that situation, right? How are you approaching that? And if we are actually approaching it with love and compassion, we really want to make a difference to that person's life, then the impact will be different, as opposed to if we approach it with disdain and calling out their faults with the air of superiority and thinking we are better than you, at least, kind of a deal. It's kind of ironical, because if you think about it, we are all sailing in the same boat, right? It's like in the same jail, we are there, material jail that we are in, right? Iron jail, we have 3 jails. One is a golden jail, which is Swarg, and then we are in the middle kind of a standard jail. So it's like one person telling the other person, hey, by the way, we are like inhabiting the same jail, and we are saying, hey, by the way, your sin is bigger than mine, even though we are in the same jail. So it's like a difference of 1921, 19-20 ka farak between all of us, because we are actually, there's a reason we are in this material world, right? And we are positioned to stay or coexist with each other. And then within that, we start finding faults with people, thinking, we are at least better than you. That is typically our argument our mind gives. All right, I'm telling you this because I think I'm at least better than you in this regard, at least, kind of a deal. So scriptures tell us, if you are truly on the spiritual path, right, you should be so hung up in focusing on fixing your own self, that you should not even have time to find faults in others. Obviously, when you have to live practically, there are so many things that you have to anyway go with. But then they say a true sadhak is so engrossed in fixing the defects that are within them. First of all, identification of those defects with the self-awareness, and then working on those. It's like I have so much of homework to do, and then where do I have time to get engaged in trying to fix somebody else, right? That's where the problem starts. But those are definitely ideal and advanced stages. But our scriptures tell us that you have so much work to do on yourself. Okay, so forget about fixing the world, fixing your neighbor, and fixing the people around. Things will remain as they are. Yes, if it comes in your path where you have to draw some lines, and for you to navigate or operate effectively, even in your day-to-day life, if you have to draw some lines with somebody, yes, that is fine. But in general, we should not be like a hammer trying to find a nail all around us, where we find problems with world, people, and pretty much everything around us. Yes, let's hear from, I can see quite a few other hands. We'll continue. This is what we are discussing. So let's continue with our conversation and see if we can bring in some more perspectives
Smitaji,
as well.
You can go ahead, Smitaji. Thank you for waiting.
Please go ahead.
Radhe, Radhe. My perspective is I will see everybody the way I am from inside. So if I'm judgmental, I will find you judgmental. I'll find Amritavani judgmental. Everybody in the group judgmental. But if I'm not judgmental from inside, I will not find anybody judgmental. And then coming to the point, like why people find faults or are jealous or something. I mean, that again depends on the stage of life where you are. I mean, if you are blessed with everything, I don't think so the person will feel egoistic or jealous or something like that. But if you're not, then you'll feel, oh my goodness, that person is, why that person is this, whatever, that jealousy will come. Like teachers, like many times, I mean, Simaji, Padmaji teaches us a lot of things and shares a lot of things. They won't feel very jealous about my achievement or your achievement or anybody's achievement within the group, because that's within them. It's giving. It's part of their nature.
Beautiful
So
point.
So in my case, I feel that whatever is me is the reflection what I will see in others.
Beautiful point. Very true. So if you look at the second option that I had put in here, is symptom of an impure mind, and that's what I'm going to touch upon a little bit here. You brought in a very interesting point, right? Whatever I see, it basically in others is a reflection of what I have in me, and that's exactly what Sri Maharaj also tells. Whenever we look at some pardosh or somebody's dosh, it is a sure shot proof of that defect residing in you, that seed being in you as well, right? For example, if you look at a kid, will a kid be able to make out that somebody else is cheating or taking them for a ride? No. Because why? Because that defect is not in them. They are so pure that they will not be able to make out even if you are being sly or doing some trickery with them, because they are pure at heart. So only if a defect exists in you, whether it's in a dormant form, in a small form as a sapling or a full grown tree, then only you'll be able to identify it in others. So whenever we see defects, Maharajji says it's a very strong thing when I heard it for the first time. That means when you're looking at somebody and you're able to identify with a fault in somebody, that is a sure shot sign that that seed exists in you as well. And secondly, if you look at it from a psychology standpoint, judging is easy than learning. Why we judge people? It's because it takes effort to understand somebody or to learn where they are coming from. And because that takes effort, that's why our mind takes a path to the least resistance. Least resistance is what? Judge it, form an opinion, have a stereotype in mind. There's no accountability, right? It's a very convenient thing, and move on, because now you're conveniently able to fit that thing in the model of your mind. Limited frameworks we have about this world, and if something doesn't fit in that framework, form a judgment about them, and that simplifies the equation, because it takes effort and a lot of investment to even try to understand where the other person is coming from, or to put yourself in their shoes. And because we don't do that, we cannot do that, it takes effort. Our mind will tell us, take the path of least resistance, judge it, and the deed is done, kind of a deal. Let's continue. Great points. It's a reflection of the defect in us when we start looking at faults in others.
Annapurna ji, thank you for waiting.
Please go ahead.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, I just want to say what Nitinji said, See, what happens is when you meet a person or something, it's a tendency for us to understand how we have to be, because everybody operates in three modes, of material, like sattva, rajas, tamas. You really have to understand. I think in that process, I think you will judge. And many times, I think you find faults in people because of your expectation. You want them to be in one way, and then I think that's what happens. I was just talking that I think it is nice to understand, but maybe you should not judge, because many times if you don't know, how to shape your behavior with them, right?
True.
How you deal with them, because many times, you just like, you proact, but still you have to understand their nature. But I think in that process, you make a mistake of judging them, I think there is nothing wrong in understanding them, right? You have to understand, because, if you want to interact with them, you have to, I think many times because of the expectation that they have to behave like that, I think that's what gives, that you shouldn't do it. And then other thing is you should not judge them. Means many times, your judgment will be right only not to find fault and feel superiority, but you do it so that you know how to be with them, because there are people with, passion, rajas, and people with sattva, everything. You really have to know where exactly, you deal with them.
Fair point, Annapurna ji. Beautiful points. That's true. So again, let's put it back in context, right? Like we said, we take the main dose in form of reading the scriptures, understanding the concepts, going through the shlokas, right? That basically helps us build some spiritual treasures and wealth. Equally important is not to lose what we have acquired. And these two tendencies that our mind has because of, the practice of so many lifetimes can actually fritter away that wealth just like that. It is called that hathi snan, right? The hathi, the elephant, it goes, takes a bath, cleans itself up. And you know what it does immediately after that? It takes a lot of what you call dust and puts it back on its body. So it negates all the good work that it had done just a few minutes back. So similarly, when we are investing time and we are able to hold on, acquiring that wealth, Shimaraji says it's important that you have built the safeguards or the guardrails around it so that you're not losing that wealth just like that because of your tendencies of our mind, which is spoilt since time eternity. And one of those tendencies is to indulge in talks, loose talks, finding faults, gossiping, judging. The more we refrain ourselves, the more we limit our mind from getting into that trap, and we start training it, the better off we are, because that is actually losing the wealth that we have accumulated. That is why we're discussing this. There's more like a supplement in addition to the dose that we, regular dose that we take, so that we are not only gaining something, but also figuring out how not to lose what we have gained. Okay, let's continue. I can see quite a few other hands as well. Please fill out the feedback tracker as well on the session or otherwise. And let's continue this discussion. And then I had one more question, but I think we'll just conclude this conversation today. Tomorrow we will continue where we left in 3.43. Tomorrow is going to be the concluding session for that shloka before we start with chapter 4. We will revisit the topic that we were having a nice discussion on, right? Going after a nice home, family, kids, all that stuff is fine. But is that sufficient is what we will tackle in tomorrow's discussion. So let's continue. I can see quite a few other hands as well.
I have many hands, so I'll just give it to people who haven't spoken first. So I see a new name, Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe, Balaji.
I have come across a situation like in COVID time, we got anti-vax, anti-mask, anti-establishment. Some of your own colleagues at times are doing these, which doesn't seem right from their point of view as well as from the societal point of view.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we don't point it out to them that they should be wearing masks like we are wearing,
mm-hmm.
They should be taking vaccination like most are taking. If you don't point these faults in them, whether you like to call them faults or you like to call them whatever else in place of the faults, then you are putting yourself at risk, them at risk, as well as the society at risk.
Right.
Some of the faults that we find which are useful by correction, should we not do it?
No, Gita is not saying that you don't do that. Again, what is your intent behind it? Your intent is the larger good, including their safety as well, right? So if you approach it with that, now, if you say it angrily or you get upset about it or you get irritated about it if they don't do it, or whether you just have a disposition where you are giving them or telling them what you are feeling, in a calm, composed manner, and that there's only so much you can do. You cannot change their mind just because you're going to talk to them angrily. Is not going to change the consequence of what you're going to get out of it, right? So it's your mental disposition around that situation that would dictate whether you are doing it in the right manner or not. That's pretty much it. If you get upset, you get irritated, and you say I have a right to get angry at them, then that is a problem. But if you're saying, okay, I need to tell them, but if they don't want to do it, that's their choice, right? Djokovic, there's a classic controversy that happened recently. He's a leading tennis player, and he gave up Australian Open because he's an anti-vaxxer. That's his choice. Now, Gita, if I go by Gita, if you attended Gita Summit, there was a doctor in that Gita Summit. He said that getting vaccinated, it's part of your spiritual duty. Like Lord Krishna is talking about our prescribed duties in this material world. This is also one of those where you are thinking about the larger good. That is what he was saying. He was quoting that reference, that how he marries his medical profession to Bhagavad Gita. And he said, in today's time, it is your duty. Even if you are, let's say, somebody tells you you have 100% immunity, you have the required antibodies for whatever reason, still you have to do that for the larger good, because you don't want to become an instrument where the virus is mutating and then it's causing. But then, if people who don't do that, do we get upset with them? Do we criticize them? Do we tell 10 more people? That is where I think we have to draw some mental lines, and that's essentially what Bhagavad Gita is telling us. You don't derail your spiritual journey just because you can't control other people. Yes, you can tell them, have a good conversation with them as best as will within your control, but beyond that, we have to have that understanding. There's only so much we can do. Hope that answers at least part of your question.
Yep. I happen to be a doctor as well, so it's part of my duty to tell them that you're right about.
It's part of our duty. He was saying, I really like that. He said, Lord Krishna says that there are some prescribed duties in this world that you have to carry out. And he said, in these times, it is your prescribed duty to get vaccinated so that you don't end up becoming an agent in spreading this, disease further. Beautiful point. Thank you so much. Great to hear from you, Dr. Bhala.
Pallavi ji, please go ahead. Thank you for waiting. Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe, Pallavi ji.
Radhe Radhe, Nitin ji, what an excellent discussion going on. Great points. Awesome class. So quickly, I wanted to mention about the point. I think Annapurna ji also mentioned. Mostly, I noticed that people try to find faults when they do not start liking someone. And this liking and disliking kind of thing appears when their expectations are not met. So for example, if someone thinks that if someone is expecting their child to be very good in maths and the child is not good in maths, so by no means they would be able to see that the child has some other quality. Maybe the child could be good in art or could be good in any other subject, but the parents, because they notice that the child is not good in maths, so they start finding fault in the child. So, I mean, just one example. I felt personally with myself when my daughter was learning how to drive. I used to get so panicked when she was driving. So that time, I used to find fault in her driving because I was scared. I was scared that she'll hurt herself. So I think that was also one, I think I worked upon on myself, because I felt that I was deliberately finding fault because I was scared that she'll hurt herself. So trying to protect, kind of. So I kept always finding fault that you should not do like this, you should have done this, you should have done that. So, which I worked on myself, that stop not to doing that.
Good.
But yeah.
Realize that and took control in your hand. But yeah, that's a great point, Pallavi ji, you called out. In fact, psychologically, it is called reconfirmation bias as well. So you would see the tendency of the mind when you take a disliking to some person because of whatever reason. Right? Bhagavad Gita is telling, first of all, that itself is incorrect. Right? Rag, dvesh is something we need to stay away from. So let's say you have dvesh towards somebody, you've taken a disliking to somebody for whatever reason. Now you will find reasons, your mind will start finding reasons to reconfirm that why you dislike person. By the way, he's like that also, it's like that also, this is also a problem. So now your mind will start magnifying other things and start finding faults where there might be none. So it's called reconfirmation bias, where you want to prove yourself right from every sense. Great point, Pallavi ji. Okay.
Thank you. Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.
Thank you.
Real quick, I know we have 10 participants and probably 10 minutes. So if you can limit to 1 minute and so, that will be good.
Yes. Seema ji, please go ahead. Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe, everyone. I think people find faults with others when they don't have their qualities or are jealous of them. And that is a self-reflection. They're holding their own, the mirror in front of them. That's what I believe. Because, and it, electricity, water, and people, especially the minds, go on the path, take the path of least resistance.
Great point. Yeah, very true.
All three of them that I noticed. Also, Nitinji, if I could talk to Dr. Lakshmi about the third point. I see that she's there.
Sure, I can pass on that to you. I got a chance to speak to her, so you should be getting.
She's a participant here.
Okay. Sure. So, Lakshmiji, I'll tie you up to Seemaji. I think she wanted to respond to each of the three questions that you had yesterday. So, maybe
the three
one-on-one.
I got about your father and about.
Yeah, we can have one-on-one on that. So I'll patch you up with Lakshmiji on that.
Okay, thank you.
No worries. So finding faults is not a big deal. Even Shishupal, he found how many 100 faults in Lord Krishna. That's not a big deal. Once your mind is predisposed to finding faults in somebody you don't like, you can manufacture 1,000 faults in that case. Yes, let's hear from other participants as well.
Ramakrishna ji, Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe Ramakrishna ji.
Yeah, Radhe Radhe. I mean, I feel it is to satisfy our ego, we find faults.
Very true.
So that's and it will only pamper our ego, so that and it will cover our mistakes or our own faults.
Yep.
If you see our others' faults, then we can feel like we are better than others.
Yep. Yeah. Pride, ego. Yep. Yeah. And it dirties our mind as well. So that's another part of it.
Yeah. Actually, Kumarji has been waiting from a long time. Thank you so much, Kumarji. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Ramakrishna ji. Wonderful points. Thank you so much.
Radhe Radhe, everyone. If you can bring the previous slide, Nitinji. And I want to start on a humorous note. The other Nitinji I heard is a lawyer. And he came back to say that he agrees the lady is at fault. I thought he would kind of fight the case for the lady as a lawyer. So just that's on a humorous note. But seriously, again, in professions where you have to defend people, tell lies, which I think generally lawyers in courtrooms at least have to do a lot. How do they marry spirituality with their profession? That is a question I always have. I know many of them are religious. They pray to God and all this stuff, so that, that thing, but are they really spiritual? I don't know, but that's a different question.
I don't know.
Now on these, if I see here, most of us or almost all of us have found fault with others. I was a guy who would find fault with everything, including the weather. Right, when I came from the sunny Chennai to the cold Chicago, I'm like, everything I say, it's if it's raining, it was raining. And of course, when it's cold, it's bitingly cold, right? So, but then slowly I saw that once I kind of said, I'm not going to blame on anything, especially, of course, after turning a little more spiritual with all these knowledge that we have acquired. It puts me more at peace, puts me more at kinship with the world and the people around me. So I used to do the same thing, like because of ego and all those things. And also sometimes, to try to help people. But once I try to help a person in front of other people, which is not the right thing to do as well, right? So I learned, with experience, I learned this, but I find it's much more peaceful not to find fault. It takes a lot of effort, of course. But as they say, right, if you're pointing one finger at the other person, all the others are pointing back at you. So always think of that, and then you would not find fault. Try to help people if need be, but in a very discreet way, so that the other person does not get hurt as well.
Beautiful points, Kumarji. I think that's where I think it requires a conscious effort on our part, because our mind, it's like an involuntary reaction, like sneezing. Do you have control over it? You don't. So similarly, it's like even before you realize that's where your mind is heading, you would have already thought about it. That's how badly trained our mind is. So it needs to be reverse trained, so that it starts seeing positivity and then refrain from unnecessary analysis of people, and especially around their faults. So it would take a bit
Yeah.
of doing and
Just
practice.
one note of caution for all of us, I think, and many of us know it, but I do this, like I still am a member of Facebook and all that stuff. And there's so much judging there, right? People don't know the situation. Someone is saying something and then so many people start judging it. It puts the whole thing in a negative thing. So the least we are on the social media, it would really help us in purifying our mind.
Yeah, I left social media, I don't know how many years back, so I don't miss it anymore, for sure. Okay, let's hear from, let's give the new participants a chance who have not had a chance to speak.
Sure. Yeah, I'll give
I
it
see
to
Asha ji, Rema ji, and I think
Shika ji. Yeah, I'll give it to them. Shika ji, Asha ji, and Rema ji. Radhe Radhe, Shika ji, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe ji.
Radhe Radhe.
Okay, so I feel that all these emotions, like being fearful or being jealous or finding faults in others, I think it all acts as a defense mechanism. Like we all somewhere or the other we use it, and I'll just keep it really quick. So number one, it comes because maybe we don't have any occupation, we are not employed, or we are not working. So that khali dimag shaitan ka ghar. So you keep on thinking, overthinking and all of that, and that's why you comes to a conclusion. Like for example, I've seen it even in the family as well, like the people when they don't work, and then they sit and their kitty parties and everything keeps on going, and then they keep on finding faults in others. So I think it just comes from that that inferiority complex or something. When you don't have that thing, so you keep on talking about others in order to make yourself happy. And somebody also point us out, in terms of social media, if you talk about Facebook, Instagram, and all these celebrities, I mean, whatever they're doing, and they're doing great and everything, but still you will find that whatever they do, something or the other, they people keep on trolling them on social media. And it's not just about the celebrities, the film industry people, but anybody, like a businessman or anything, whosoever has that high kind of potential in them. So I think that's why I feel that that's why we also attend all these lectures, in order to purify ourselves, in order to know what all are our faults, and in order to correct it. So yeah, I think that's the only path, in order to know yourself, that okay, this is the fault in you. Otherwise it happens that people doesn't even get to know that we have such tendencies in our lives. Once you really work on yourself, once you start reading, or start introspecting yourself, that what kind of person you are. Or for example, if I see myself and I compare myself what I was 2 years ago, or 1 year ago, or 10 years ago, and I'll see the what kind of growth I have achieved in my life, then only all these you can check box all these things, that okay, this you need to improve here, and this is what you have improved. So I think yeah.
If there was a great point, Shikha ji. Did you finish your thought real quick? If you can, if you have a couple
Yes,
of
yes,
minutes.
yes.
Please finish your thought. Oh, you did already?
Yeah, she said she's done.
Okay,
Please
no, great
finish.
point, Shikha ji. Very nice. In fact, it's like the more you learn, the more you get to know about yourself, the more you understand that how much there is still stuff out there that needs to be worked on. And if there was an encyclopedia one would create about the list of things that you need to fix in yourself, over time you would imagine, right, it should shrink, but it will keep on expanding, because the more our self-awareness grows, the more we get in touch with our weaknesses, the realities that we need to of our own self, that we need to work on. And that is the whole game of spirituality. That's why it's said that the self-transformation project is the most exciting project one can ever undertake. Beautiful point, Shikhaji. Let's quickly hear from, I think Ashaji probably raising hand for the first time. Let's hear from Ashaji and then Remaji, and then I know we are a little bit over time. I'll let you do the announcements as well, Amritamani ji.
Yes, Ashaji, please go ahead. Radhe Radhe. Asha's iPhone.
Radhe Radhe.
Ashaji.
I think most of the people are finding faults in others because of, as the previous participant said, that they are suffering of some kind of inferiority complex, and they are jealous of the other person's talent and capacity, and they are egoistic also. So that's why they are finding faults in others and insulting and pointing out that their faults. And sometimes it happens when they have that sufferings in childhood also, that they were humiliated by other persons or relatives, or that's why the hidden things that they come out by this behavior. And it is a very psychological analysis it requires, that but when we get this knowledge, and when we enrich ourselves, and when we get rid of that narrow-mindedness, then we can do that. And first of all, we have to be so much humble and out of our ego. If we can do that, then we can properly not to hurt by others finding faults, and the same we can do by that विशाल दृष्टिकोण के ऐसे करने से दूसरे को क्या हर्ट होता होगा. So that's why I think so many things are can be discussed, but in short, I have to say that next discussion as always. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Asha ji. Wonderful points, like you said. Drishti, apni vishal. I mean, we have to broaden our viewpoint around things around us. Great point. Where are you joining us from, Asha ji?
Asha ji, where are you joining us from, Asha ji?
I'm from New Jersey, Monroe Township.
Okay, good to hear you, Asha ji.
Thank you.
Have you over the sessions. Yes, great. Wonderful points. Do we have anybody, or maybe one?
Yes, we have Remaji. She wasn't given a chance, so should we take her?
Do the announcements as well. I know we are always over, so hopefully we can wrap it up fairly quickly now.
Yes, yeah, once she's done, I will give the announcement.
Please do fill out the feedback tracker as well. And tomorrow we're going to have a interesting conversation around the concept that we had been discussing. So yes, Remaji, real quick.
Yes, please unmute yourself, and yes, go ahead, please, Remaji.
Radhe Radhe to everyone.
Radhe Radhe, Remaji.
It's just that sometimes I feel it's okay to find faults with others, especially if somebody has hurt you in any way. Mm-hmm. And whether it could be financially, emotionally, or maligned your reputation, done some harm to you. I think it is better to tell somebody else about it, because if they have done something wrong, other people need to know. If they don't know, then this person who has done harm to you, they come out as good people, but actually they are not, because you have had the experience, not the other person. So that's why I just feel like if I've had a bad experience on somebody, and that also with the proof, not just gossiping, but if I have a proof that somebody has hurt me, and I feel I will definitely tell my, if it's supposing is my family member, of course I'm going to tell my other family members that this is what he has done, so that your family becomes aware too, that we thought about him or her to be a good person, but look what he has done. So that's. Yep. So even though it may be wrong to gossip or whatever, but sometimes you have to make other people aware that this person is not all that good that everybody is thinking about him is.
Yeah, I think
Nice.
again it boils down to the intention and the spirit in which we are communicating. So if the spirit is vengeance, there's a bit of hatred, then we are not doing a good thing. So first we need to become neutral to that. And then yes, if you're warning somebody, possibly, I don't know about that. But yeah, I think that sentiment has to be purified to begin with, because end game is to help somebody, and not to approach it with the spirit of, vengeance. Basically, that sentiment should not be there. That's what God is telling us to stay away from, because then you are simply venting it out. That point, it's like taking a so that sentiment, if we can control that sentiment or work on ourselves where we have become neutral to that, risen above it, and then yes, for the larger good, we are warning people around, and perfectly okay, I guess. But yeah, these are dualities we have to deal with in our mind. No, it's not so easy, because we get so sucked into those things that we really are not able to analyze why are we saying something or doing something. Is it because we just hate that person, we are venting it out, or are we doing it because we at the end of the day want that person to be improve as well, and at the same time want other people to be wary or cautious about him? That much analytical thinking or foresight, I mean reflection, does not come so automatically unless we have trained our mind and worked really hard on it. They are very deeper concepts, so I think it requires a lot of practice. But yeah, great discussion. Over to you, Amrita Vaniji, for any announcements, and then we'll continue this discussion on our forum. I don't want to take too much of your time like we always do.
Yes, Nitinji, thank you. For the announcements, we do have this Tyagaraja Aradhan, that is the JKYog 175th Saint Tyagaraja Aradhan. It is for singers, instrumentalists, for solo and group performances. So please do take a moment to see that. It is, you can send your, and you can record your videos and send it is in person and recorded thing. So please do have a look at that. We do have a youth book club on science of mind management that is going to start on Saturday, the Jan 29th, 11 a.m. CST. So for any details, you can check into www.radhakrishnatemple.net/online classes. And we do have even Sanskriti for 2022, that is for in-person. So let people know anybody is here in Dallas. The attendance tracker has already been posted. I will post it once again now. So yes, Nitinji, so those are the announcements.
Yes, so I see 3 hands, but I don't want Amrita Vaniji to be telling something about the session where Chitragupt ji has to take account of that. So to avoid that, let's so continue our discussion on our forum, because I think it's a topic, and I had actually 2 questions today, but one topic took a lot of time. Tomorrow we'll get back to our Bhagavad Gita discussion. We'll conclude that shloka with a discussion on the chariot thing, the direction, how to propel the direction to a right direction, or dovetail it to the right direction, is what we're going to conclude tomorrow. So thank you everybody for your enthusiastic participation. Please do fill out the feedback form, and if you have any suggestions, just feel free to write in there. Any questions, do that. I try my best to answer it as best as I possibly can. So thank you again for the wonderful discussion. You can text me if you didn't get a chance to speak today, and let's do our closing prayers. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah, Sarve Santu Niramaya, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschit Dukh Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you everybody. Radhe Radhe. Have a wonderful day ahead and a great rest of your evening. I'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you, Nitinji. Thank you, everyone. Shyamji, thank you so much. So there are a lot of comments. So I will take a screenshot and then send it to Nitinji. So yes, there are a lot of comments today, Nitinji, in the chat. So I'll just send you all the pics.
Okay. And please keep texting to Amrita Vaniji, not me, because during the session, I'm not checking my chat. So if you are sending and you're thinking I'm not responding, it's...
Yes.
Chitragupji will take note, okay? Because my intention is clear. I didn't even read it. All right. Thank you, everybody. Good night, and I'll see you tomorrow. You can send me the chat comments, Amrita Vaniji.
Sure. Yes. Thank you, everyone. Radhe Radhe.
Thank you, everybody.